Perfect. All right, George. 10 seconds. Are you ready? Are you hovering?
I'm definitely hovering.
You're hovering? Are you going to be able
Well,
to
let me check. No, the chair is on the ground. I am
Perfect.
not hovering.
Perfect. And hit that button.
Recording live from the Haley Sisters Memorial Studios, straight out of lovely Elmont, Ontario, it's time for This Death Clock Has 60 Minutes, your unofficial Warmahordes news broadcast. It's 8 p.m. Wednesday night, the beers are cold, the news is fresh, and the death clock starts now.
How can I do it? I'm in Baltimore.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Death Clock. Oh my God, it's been weeks. Have you and Jason been podcasting while I was away?
Sometimes. Occasionally.
I give you one job to do.
When there was literally no other choice, we produced content.
Oh, good. We've got a lot of exciting stuff that has happened over the last few weeks, and we're not going to talk about any of that.
But CIDs
are
no
CID talk.
There's Lock and Load and Mon Poc.
Nope. Nope.
TGX in the weekend?
Nope.
None of that?
Well, maybe a little bit. But
okay.
There's reasons for this because tonight we have a special guest on tonight. Oh, Dave Taylor. He's special.
I
thought James Craig was a special guest.
Well,
no,
James
he's
Craig
technically
is
part of Moose Machine now.
Yeah, we just ducted him at this point. He's a
no, not inducted, abducted.
No, just
it was that van, the white van where we drove up to his
we
house.
Ducted him. Remember those 4 ducks?
Oh, yeah, the big ducks.
Yeah, with ducks we shoved. Yes, James has become a regular on the show, and whenever we do a painting podcast, which we'll be talking about it tonight, James is our co-host. So he's actually the host with the most when it comes to painting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
fantastic.
So before we get too far into this, we'll introduce James. James, hi James. How's been your? You've been busy. What are you working
on? So something I've shown a little bit of the last little while is the set of busts from the show Blood Drive that I've been painting away at, and the third one was the secret one, and it's no longer a secret. It was commissioned by Colin Cunningham, the actor who played Slink in the show, as a gift for James Roll, who created the show.
Oh, cool.
And so that one's been delivered to James, and he's pretty darn happy with it, and I'm happy that it went so well. Right now, I'm working on Colin's one because he just happens to be in Canada this week, and it cost me like $90 to ship the last one to him for James. So I'd rather deliver this. I mean, because it will be more safe that way. Yes,
more safety. Not the fact that they're also going to charge you a buttload of tariffs when you try to send it over the border right now.
Anything is possible, but not having to deal with the border sounds awful good. So I'm trying to finish painting this one today or tomorrow. So that I can deliver it to Colin in the next couple days when we meet up for coffee.
Good news.
And then
you're a teacher. You get the whole summer off, so you can just spend 9 hours painting tomorrow.
Clearly, that is exactly what I get to do. My children are so good, I can let them run free.
Exactly. Children
or
are
I don't
easy.
care, so
you just put leashes on them. They run around. You just got to make sure that they don't wrap themselves around the pole too many times, right?
Yeah.
That's what you do with kids? Right.
Got one of those ones that attaches to the clothesline. Go back and forth and back and forth.
Right, perfect. The child run. That's what that's called, right? I got to introduce everybody else. Unfortunately, Maelstrom is not here this evening. He apparently has 50 hours of work to do, which is good because he's been working at the pet store.
Yeah, well, like a lot of freelance artists have to do, he had to get a bit of a day job to make ends meet, and then the day job said, well, if you're going to work here, we'd kind of like you to work all the time.
Yeah.
Not just like the couple of hours you needed. And so he's now trying to do 2 full-time jobs at the same time, and we're taking Friday off to go to TGX.
There you go. And we got to introduce Dave Taylor. Dave, say good day. What have you been up to, Dave?
What have I been up to? I've actually been traveling in Canada.
What?
Dun, dun, dun. Plot twist.
Crazy, I know. But like on the other side from you guys. So I was over in the Rockies.
Ah.
For 10 days.
Obviously, you're not full-on American, because if you're full-on American, you'd be like, I was really close to you guys in British Columbia.
We met Jeff. You know Jeff, right?
No, I'm aware of geography.
Good. That's
That's more than I can say for my wife.
Okay.
all right, ladies and gentlemen. We've got
maps, but anyway, yes.
we've got a lot to talk about this evening. What we're going to be talking about tonight is James and I and Dave are all involved in a little thing called the Nova Open Charitable Foundation. We're going to be talking about the War Machine Army that was donated this year. That I'm sure if you listen to the podcast, you've heard us talk about it extensively because we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, and if you watch some of the painting episodes, you will have seen various bits of it go past.
Yeah, because both James and I were painting pieces live on the air. But before we get into that, George, we do have a little bit of upkeep to do. There has been some stuff happening in the War Machine world.
There's been one or two little things.
Little things. There's been some CIDs come and gone.
It's an entire new faction that came out.
A whole new faction that came on. And
That's nothing.
Yeah, you know.
That's not much. New factions.
Yeah, they come along every year. What do you want?
Yeah, what do you want for nothing? No rubber biscuit.
New version of Steamroller.
Yeah, and Monpoc is back, and
and it's now a collectible instead of. I hope I get the one model I need to complete my army in this random box.
So there's been some cool stuff happening. I've been in different countries for the last 3 months, basically. How is the community doing? Are they still as excited? Is it bigger excitement, less excitement, concern? What's
well,
going
there's
down?
a lot of people finally getting their hands on the Crucible Guard stuff.
And they said that they're not selling it through Bahi anymore, right? Like those are going to stores. Is that the deal?
Yeah, well, I think they realized that trying to sell a faction that limited through Bahi was going to be a problem.
Right.
So the Railless Interceptor and the caster based on the Railless Interceptor, which I'm assuming are all one box. Mm-hmm. I don't know that for a fact yet because it hasn't released.
Right.
But my assumption is that it's going to be a magnetizable between the two Railless Interceptors and the caster.
What about Colossal? Is the Colossal available in store as well, or is
I believe it is going to be available.
Well,
in
that's
store.
a big deal. That's a bit of a retraction from Privateer Press because they did say they were going to do it that way, and a lot of people said they weren't going to buy into the faction anymore if they had to spend.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of people have either store credit or they have deals with stores. I know a lot of people fund one hobby with another. So like they sell Magic cards so that they can buy War Machine models or whatever.
Or vice versa.
Yeah, exactly. And and not being able to buy them at a local store for core models, like these aren't your second or third Colossal or your second or third Battle Engine.
No.
This is core models for the faction.
This is stuff you really need,
Yeah,
especially with a caster that's based on using these. Good. Well, it's good on them. I'm glad that they changed their tactics. I hope it works out well because I know we had concerns when everything started going that direction.
Now,
especially with the new tariff laws coming up. And I will also say, and James and I both experienced this, when just shipping models right now across the border, we used to not get taxed on them. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes you get a little bit of tax.
Somebody would hit you with a couple of bucks.
The last couple of times, and when James and I had our models shipped up for the Nova Open to paint, we got hit. James, do you remember what it was? It was like $20 worth of taxes, $30 worth of taxes we got hit on for that.
Wow.
And that's above and beyond everything else that you're already paying. So, I'd much rather buy it from a store at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I will be, speaking of things that just happened at Lock and Load, we, of course, as we always do, saw a lot of models. Mm-hmm. And I will be going back to Scorn for a while because they are about to release like a 2.5 foot tall Immortal model. The new Immortal Battle Engine is just a giant Immortal. Oh, cool. So I will actually be buying a... It is... have you seen the church? Have you seen the new church?
I haven't, no.
It is... actually, it's supposed to be slightly taller than that model.
Means it's more than a foot tall.
Yeah, it is gigantic.
So it just takes up an entire battle foam bag to itself.
I assume I'm going to have to magnetize it in the middle and just transport it in half.
And hopefully there'll be a saw that comes with it so that you can do that.
If it's solid resin, that thing's going to be like $800.
Use it as a home defense weapon.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so
Frickin' style.
moving on from that, we're going to get together next week. Now that I'm back in town for the long haul, because I changed jobs.
So that you wouldn't have to travel.
I changed jobs again. I'm now, so I've been, anybody who doesn't know, I've been taken on as the creative director at Jackson Kayak now for their media house and their marketing division. And the hope is that they don't make me travel as much.
Yeah.
That being said, I have to leave tomorrow to go on a shoot. So, we're going to talk a bit about.
Oh my God.
Let's go over to Dave and let's sort of get the news for the Nova Open. What do we got going on with the Nova Open Charitable Foundation this year in general, and what kind of exciting armies are coming up there, Dave?
Okay, in general, so earlier this year we had, what do we have? We had a Shadespire raffle where we had the first 4 war bands were all painted. We had that raffle. We had a Saga raffle in March, April time, where we raffled off a 6-point Saga warband. And now we're basically right in the thick of our summer raffles. We have 22 different raffles, I think. 22, 23, somewhere like that. Where we've got armies, we've got detachments, we've got single models. All sorts of stuff going incredibly well.
So for the audience that may not know this, I mean, we've done several podcasts on what the Nova Open Charitable Foundation is and how it works. But for anybody that hasn't listened to all the casts and might be listening to this from another source, tell us a bit about what we're talking about with the Nova Open and how it works.
Sure thing. Okay, so there, I'll make sure we sort of have a nice separation here. There's the Nova Open Convention, Wargaming Convention, which takes place first weekend in September each year in Northern Virginia, hence Nova, Northern Virginia there. But out of that was born an organization called the Nova Open Charitable Foundation, which is a separate arm. This is Nova Open Charitable Foundation is a registered charity. Each year we talk with painters, wargamers around the world, and bring them together to paint miniatures that they donate, and we raffle off for charity. That's really the sort of the long and the short of it. But yeah.
Perfect. We'll get right into the nitty gritty. We're going to be talking tonight about the War Machine Army, and how it fits into this. Is this the second or third War Machine Army that's come through the Nova Open Charitable Foundation?
This is the third one overall. I think in our first year, 2013, we had one, which was a Kador army, painted pink, and the proceeds for that went to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. But last year, Mr. Craig put together a team and painted an awesome Signar army.
And then this year we've got a third one. Let's go over to James. James, let's talk a bit about gathering the team together. You gathered an amazing team together and one scrub. Tell me a bit about.
Don't make fun of Ben.
Oh, sad Ben.
So you gathered a team. Talk to me a bit about your sort of why you wanted to do this in the first place. Maybe start with the Signar Army you did last year. Talk about how the team has advanced this year, and talk to me a bit about what sort of came out of that.
So, why did I do this? Because Dave asked me to be perfectly honest.
Fair enough.
Dave and I have been friends for a very long time, and a couple times along the way, I saw the amazing things that he was doing with the Charitable Foundation. I said, Dave, let me know if there's something I can do to help. And last year he was like, you know what? There is something you can do. You do a lot of War Machine stuff. We would like to do a War Machine thing. Let's do this. And I was like, okay. And jumped right in. Lucky enough, being kind of friends with a number of people in the community lends itself to getting things done, because it's one of those many hands make light work situations. You know, getting a friend like, you know, Matt DiPietro or Dallas Kemp to paint a model for us, it happens. They're willing, they're happy to share. They know that they're giving to something that's great. They know they're contributing to both the community and to the larger community, you know, really doing something special out. And so people are willing to help if you ask. It's just having somebody who has enough people that they can ask. Luckily, with the kind of getting back in contact with a lot of the community in a deeper way, with my involvement with Crystal Brush and Adepticon the last 2 years, and with World Expo, you know, a lot of people were, you know, happy to jump back on board to help me out. It was like getting the old gang back together and introducing them to some of my new friends. So last year we chose Signar because Signar are very much kind of War Machine poster boys, I guess. They're, you know, very iconic of the game. They've got a really strong look to them. And having made friends with Yom and seeing a lot of his Signar stuff with all the crazy glow effects, it was inspiring. So I was like, that's what we need to do. So once I had him on board, sharing his color scheme and jumping in to paint something for us, then, you know, things just kind of fell in line. And, you know, much in the same way that I had said to Dave for several years there, you know, if you're doing this kind of thing again, let me know. If you need some help, let me know. I had a number of offers, and Dave asked me to do this again this year. So I took a few of my friends up on those offers. Devonian from the War Machine Hordes painting channel, and Advanced Maneuvers, I called on him, and he did our champions for us. Sam Lenz, who is one of the finest painters anywhere and an absolute machine when it comes to getting things done. I already knew that he had done trolls of his own and had a great love for trolls, so I made sure that the most, basically the coolest model in the army went straight to Sam. Called on Aaron Lovejoy, who, you know, way back in the old Golden Demon Lounge days had done some charity stuff with me way back then. Dave was involved in a one where we painted a unit of orcs, and every painter did one model for the unit. Yep. We raffled those off. So I called on Aaron, and he jumped in and chose Valka, which is just like such a good model. And I, you know, no hyperbole, not just to sell the tickets, but it's the best Valka I've seen anywhere. It is friggin' so cool.
It is friggin' gorgeous. And I've seen it on the cover of several Facebook pages since then as like an iconic thing. Yeah, and we'll continue on talking about all the different guys that came on board. One of the things that I found interesting was when you and I first started talking about this with the Signar Army a year or two ago. One of the things that went back and forth in our conversation was, how do we build the list? And one of the things that was really cool was, instead of just going for the prettiest models and slapping them all together into a list, you and I went to our friend Marc-Andre LeBlanc and said, hey, MA, can you like take this core model, because we really wanted the Black 13th in there, and make a cool list around it? And he did, and that was really, really cool. And I think one of the evolutions of that was this year, instead of saying, here's a core model, we went to John Henry, who's a top-level... Yeah, I got it right. Who's a top-level Trolls player, and we said to him, look, you're kicking some serious ass with this faction, which was the Northkin. Can you build a list? And he did. And one of the cool things that he has done is offered anybody who gets the army that he'll be happy to sit down with you and explain to you how to play it. Right? Is that the deal? He's
actually going to provide a write-up for the new owner, which we'll be sending along to Dave shortly. And he will also be more than happy to discuss online with whoever wins it. They'll be able to kind of bounce ideas off him and see what's what. He's one of the in the troll forums online. He is one of the most helpful people around, and you know, he really knows what he's talking about. He's played just about every type of list I can think of, and a few that I never would have thought of, and he makes them work. Yeah. He knows that faction inside and out.
So so we talked a bit about some of the new painters that we brought on this year. Talk to me a bit about some of the painters that have carried over from what we did last year. Obviously, Jan was back this year. Talk to me about some of the other painters that came on board or came over.
So Matt Pietro came back and did a piece for us. This year, Chris Surrey, who's won a mountain of awards for his trolls over the years. We called on him to do Cole Grimma as our general. She's a really popular caster right now. She's fantastic, and he did a really cool job on it, practicing kind of a looser style, but a really, really neat evolution in his painting. And we had Aggie, who everybody in the War Machine community loves, and she came on and did a unit as well, half the unit matching with yourself. Ben from Primal Poodle came back again this year. And one of the things I like to do is have a few painters as part of our team who are commission painters as well, like Ben, for example, because then if the new owner wants more models painted for the army to the standard, to the color scheme, they'll have a couple people in the roster who created initially who are able to do that for them, who could take on those commissions and expand the army for them if that's something that they're interested in doing. So that's always been something I've had in my mind when putting together a team, is to make sure that there is somebody like Yam and Ben on there who do take like general commission work as well. Especially, like, there are some painters who will do a commission for you, but only on a single figure. These guys will paint units. These guys will paint armies. It's their prices are fair. Their work is exceptional. They are exactly what we needed on the team there as well. And again, Sam, Aaron, Matt, Dallas, Kemp, we've got the head of the Privateer Press studio painting the model for this army, and myself, I got to do a piece which was a lot of fun too.
And we got to do a hooch hauler too, which was pretty exciting.
Yes.
That's a brand new model as well, and it was kind of done specially, was it not?
It is a very special piece. Justin from Secret Weapon, who also provided all of the bases for the army so that we would all have great matching, really stylish bases. He did the hooch hauler. He got logos from Privateer Press. He did things up. It's a pretty cool piece. So
Dave, I want to go over to you. You're the first person to have, because everybody shipped their models to you. You're the first person to have the whole army sitting in front of you.
Yeah.
What is it? When you get an army that's been painted by 10 odd different painters with different styles, how does it look when you first put it together? Does it have cohesion?
It is an amazing thing to sort of have to see grow on. In my case, it was on the dining room table, to see the army grow as more packages came in. It was exciting, and I think almost from the start I knew that it was going to be a fantastic looking army. The first couple of models that came through, different painters, different styles, but that kept fairly true to the look and feel of the trolls, and that was cool, because then I knew all the other ones that would be coming through from guys like Sam and Matt and Dallas. I knew what those were going to look like, the quality of those that were going to be coming through. So I was really excited about it. I think even more than last year with the Signar, that this army fits really well together. It's going to look fantastic on the table, and you won't immediately recognize that it's been painted by 10 different painters, 12 different painters.
That's
so
really awesome.
It is, it's. I think that's that speaks to the effort that everybody put in. So,
what happens behind the scenes, and I think this might be interesting for some of the painters out there that are working on a new army, like George. You love buying a new army and coming up with a whole new scheme for your stuff. Mm-hmm. One of the things that's really interesting is the controlled chaos that is having our Painting Heroes Assemble group, which we now kind of just chat year round as this large group of people. But I think this speaks James, you have a really good methodology of going around making sure that we're all doing our own styles, but still painting to a certain tablet, a certain template. Tell me how you go about that, because I think this kind of speaks to how to get a cohesive army, even if your painting style has changed over the years.
Absolutely. So the first concept is what's the key color overall, and it's trolls, and we went with blue. So Dallas Kemp was one of our painters. He made videos on how to paint troll skin. I just said, look, everyone, here is how we will paint our troll skin. It only made sense to use, the studio method from one of our painters who we can bug, and there's videos, and it made it really easy. So even though there is certainly variation in style and people grab their own, different things to nuance with, it was, a standard starting point. Beyond that, with the bases, I did a demo base, and here's how I painted it. Here's what I'm thinking, and here is why I did these things. So we would have fairly cohesive basing overall as well. And the fact that they were all cast by Secret Weapon meant that they all really did match no matter what. So that was great. After that, I suggested what I wanted to see in terms of our secondary color, the second main color on the figures. And since we were doing blue, I asked for a warm, desaturated orange, so kind of a brown orange or a rusty orange, if you will. And we kind of went in that direction, but because that was all material objects, that's not skin, that's not the groundwork, that's just parts of clothes and leather and things like that. So it allowed even variation in that color scheme to look natural across the figures, because not everybody went to the same tailor on that day. Dave Taylor. And aside from that, with the metals, I said we're doing true metallic metal, and weather it, beat it up a little bit, give it a little bit of style. And so again, everything comes out looking in the same family, but not like everything had to twin each other. That gave us a full range to work within, very general parameters that let people do their thing, but kept it all so that it would interrelate nicely. And with that set of core concepts in mind, I got a couple of questions from people. A couple of people said, is this good? Is this good? And the answer was always yes. They got it. It made sense. We pushed forward, and it all really turned out in the end.
One of the cool things that came out of that, of course, is that orange beard. Because having that orange in the palette meant that people started messing with some of the molten colors as well. Mm-hmm. And we, speaking to that, the model that we were talking about earlier that's showing up on everybody's Facebook banners, being able to, I think there's going to be a few hundred orange bearded trolls that are going to be coming out of seeing that.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is pretty
so.
Cool. Dave, I want to go over to you, because the next thing that happens once you got the army is you photograph it. And I was hoping I could get you to speak, because the photographs you take of the army, people try to take photos of their army all the time. They put them all out on the table. They go as far away from it as they can. They take a photo of it, and it never translates. You can never see everything in focus. You have a bit of a different style in how you photograph. You photographed this army. Tell me a bit about the steps you take and how you get that well-composed photograph of an army.
Sure thing. Basically, I started doing that in 2011, before the Nova Open Charitable Foundation. So when I was working on a project called Heroes of Armageddon with John and Mike from Santa Cruz Warhammer, we had 4 teams building 40K armies, and when all these armies were going to be sort of brought together, they were going to sort of come to one point. We didn't know where in the country that point was going to be, but in the meantime, we asked people to take photos of what they'd painted and send them through so that we could start sort of advertising them. But we wanted to have that whole army shot. So what we had to do was go along and Photoshop and cut everything out and then arrange a composite image, basically. So we wanted to present something where we were basically getting so many sort of completely disparate photos photos with poor lighting, photos with great lighting, photos on fantastic backgrounds, photos on really shitty backgrounds, and work out a way to bring those all together. So I've kind of continued that composite feel where everything gets its sort of its own position. They're not, models aren't hidden by other models. You're not really missing out on any of the great painting that's on there in this big composite, that you can then get a feel of the scope of the army. How big is this? How much real estate is it going to take up on the table? So that's the main thing I do. So when I receive a unit, I'll photograph it on a white background. I'll clip that white background out so they can drop it onto a sort of a composite sort of thing, just build up those layers. So it's with something like this where we had, how many units do we have, James? Probably 10 or 12 units.
Yeah,
I think something like that. It's not too bad. It's just a matter of where do we put everything so that it has a reasonable sort of visual balance. Something like the 40K Ultramarines, Primaris Marines army that we have, that we're raffling off this summer as well. The composite for that was kind of ridiculous to work on because we've got over 100 infantry models and 10 vehicles, 12 vehicles, something like that. So that was a lot more work it sort of involved. But with something like this, it was just great to sort of get the beautiful models in. Actually, Devon dropped his models off personally. So I think his were the second to last models that I received.
Oh, nice.
So he got to see me take the photo, and I showed him the process, sort of putting it onto my computer, doing the Photoshop work and dropping it in. So it was really cool to be able to show him how I go through that part of the process as well.
Quick shout out to Devonian
yeah.
and the whole the War Machine painting page. If any of you who are at all interested in actually painting your models are not part of that page, go and subscribe to it because it's fantastic. It's really well organized, really well run, and there's all the great painters that we're talking about right now spend time on that page. So if you have a question, you're not just going to get an answer from, say, me. Often it'll be like Dallas who steps in and goes, yeah, to do that, it's these 4 colors, which is pretty sweet. George,
this is how I did it, he says.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if you want to know how it was done.
How I might have,
Say that again? I need to follow this closely. Yeah, exactly.
So
it's great when the guys do that.
Yeah, we've got this awesome troll army coming up this year, but how did last year's army do?
It went well. I must admit I missed that question on the show notes, so I didn't go and do any research. I think last year it was the proceeds went to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. Is that right?
correct.
And I think, if memory serves correctly, it was in the sort of $1,900 to $2,000.
I think it was around 21.
21.
Maybe.
We're in there. Yep.
We're in there. Yeah.
We could do better, is what I'm saying, War Machine community. We could do better than that.
Yep. I agree. You absolutely can. And at the moment, I think we're probably at 1,600 after 2.5 weeks. So there's 5.5 weeks to go.
One of Yom's friends bought 50 tickets.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Well, and actually, let's talk a bit about that. How does this raffle work? I mean, do I have to go to the Nova Open? He says like he doesn't know.
Well, Will, you do not have to go to the Nova Open. It is not required. You can go to novaopenfoundation.org, and on there, under the current raffles drop-down menu, you'll find all the raffles we have this year, including the what ended up being Beards, Booze, and Beatings. I think that's the name we went for. So you can find that there. Click on that. Click on buy tickets. Buy as many tickets as you like. 50 is a great number. And Tickets are available until Sunday, September 2nd, which is the last day of the Nova Open convention, at noon Eastern Summer Time. So we will be, after that, we'll be drawing the winners. We'll announce them at the convention, at the award ceremony at the end of the night. And also we'll post email or send emails out to the winners, and we will post to the social media, Nova Open Charitable Foundation social media pages. So yeah, you don't have to be there. We will send armies anywhere in the world. We've sent them several times to Australia, to Japan. Actually, the Shadespire that I mentioned earlier, we sent that to Japan. I think. We've also sent to the UK. We've sent to a couple of places in Europe, and Canada and the US as well.
How much is each ticket?
Tickets vary in price. They're either $2 or $5. So I think the tickets for the Trollkin army are $2 a piece. For most of the armies, tickets are unlimited.
The internet confirms you are correct, Dave. $2.
Woo! Yeah. I think it's because we have 3 or 4 of the raffles are at $5. So some of the individual models have a limited number of tickets. We wanted to sort of spice things up a little bit. So
and if you buy tickets for the War Machine Army, that is the tickets you only have a chance of the War Machine Army. You're not going to suddenly get like a 40K army in the mail that you're just like gonna have to do.
No, not all.
All right.
Not at all. We wouldn't do that to people. No, it's
thank God.
it is one that's very, very specific. You get to choose the army that you'd like to win, the model that you'd like to win. Another way that some people go through and do it is because we let in the case of the armies, we let the teams decide, or we let the individual painters decide for the single minis which of the 3 charities that we support that they would like those funds to go to. So we have Doctors Without Borders, Breast Cancer Research Foundation, and the Fisher House Foundation as the sort of the 3 choices that they could make. Some people like to go, oh, well, I'd like to support the Fisher House Foundation, so I will buy tickets in each of the raffles that is supporting the Fisher House Foundation or Breast Cancer Research Foundation, whichever way people want to do it, they can. But the tickets you purchase for a particular raffle are exclusively for that raffle.
We tried, ladies and gentlemen who are listening, we tried to push Dave to let us put the money towards the Maelstrom Alcohol Deficiency Foundation. Dave wouldn't let us. Apparently, we're not a real charity.
Yeah, you're supposed to have a registration number and a bunch of other stuff.
We have one for the Maelstrom Please Put Your Pants Back On Foundation.
Well, yeah, everybody donates to that. Like that's just a thing you do. If you are listening to us live, Pseudobyte has helpfully dropped the link into the chat. I will try and remember to put that same link into both our Muse story and on the Facebook when we send this episode out.
Yeah, and if not, if you can't figure it out, if you're listening to this on some other podcasting apparatus, go to novaopenfoundation.org. Should be pretty self-explanatory. And then from there, there'll be drop-down menus that'll get you to what you're looking for.
Exactly.
If you can't do that, then you're doing the internet wrong. So let's leave all of this behind. Let's actually, I'll have one more question for James, because you play Trolls. So you can. I was going to leave this one for Maelstrom, because he would get pretty excited about this particular topic of conversation, but he's not here. So James, you get to speak to this. How do you feel like this army's going to play?
Oh, this is a solid list. This has been a really good year for Trolls.
Yes.
The utility of them has come up so far. They can play into pretty much everything. You put a good person behind them like Tim Banky or John Jr. and watch out. And this list is solid. And it's a great core list that you can build in other ways very easily. There's not a model in this list that's useless. There's no model in this list that can't be transferred somewhere else. It's a really, really good utility list. And even if you never added another model to this army, it's got game as is, for sure.
And with the way that War Machine works right now, you only need this one army, right? You just go to competition, take just one army, beat everybody. So let's move over to just discussing the Nova Open a little bit, Dave. Tell me a bit about the history of the Nova Open, how it started, and how you. I mean, we talked about this briefly at the beginning of the cast, but I mean, how did this evolve? How did this become what it is, and how can we go to the Nova Open and check it out?
Okay, so the Nova Open convention itself, I think, has been running since 2009. It started off as most conventions here in the US start off as a very focused 40K sort of fiercely competitive event. They were one of the first. It was one of the first conventions where you play 4 games on your first day, and if you won all 4 of your games, that would sort of put you in a position to be invited back on the second day, where they had narrowed it down to like a 16-player field for essentially single elimination gaming. So you get down to that last person would be the champion. But over those 9-10 years now, it's grown, it's expanded. There are many more events that are being run. Great champions from all sorts of gaming communities have come together to run loads of cool stuff. It's still sort of centered around that 40K championship, but there is, I think there's 40K doubles. There's a very strong narrative event that they've kept that narrative growing over the last 6 or 7 years, I think. So when you step in to play in it, you've got a whole bunch of history behind you. Some of my buddies from a group called the Graying Legion, so Mark Rayleigh, Ty Finocchiaro, guys like that are running awesome 30K events at it. So they have a huge slate of those. There's Age of Sigmar, there's Lord of the Rings, there's War Machine and Hordes. I think Devin's had a lot of work or done a lot of work putting those events together, growing those events. There are events for Wrath of Kings and Dark Age from CMON. X-Wing events. No doubt this year there's going to be Star Wars Legion events. All sorts of stuff. Loads and loads of gaming. There's also, I think there are 6 instructors, maybe 8 instructors this year for hobby seminars. So that's been growing steadily over the years.
2 of our team members are instructing there, Matt DiPietro and Sam Lenz.
Yep, exactly. We've got the Capital Palette painting competition has been growing. When did that start? That's probably started about 6 years ago. Been growing quite well. I was asked to sort of help out and be head judge last year, and got to be head judge, or I get to be head judge again this year. And I get to work with Matt DiPietro and Roman Lepat. Roman's from the Massive Voodoo blog. Spectacular painters, so it's going to be great working on that. The Capital Palette is an open format painting competition, so we get to award as many golds as are appropriate, as many bronzes, as many silvers, that kind of thing, which is a really exciting way to sort of judge a painting competition, really. Very cool. There are a ton of vendors that come along that bring all their goodies. Pretty much anything you could sort of really think of is going to be there. We have there's quite a lot of space for smaller vendors as well, people who are sort of one-man shows. So they get a chance to sort of, I was going to say a chance to expose themselves, but get some exposure while they're sort of running their booth. But
Jace will be there.
But yeah, so I think this year there's going to be close to 2,000 people at the event, which is absolutely cool. So there's there's a lot of stuff going on sort of all the time. One thing that the Nova Open Charitable Foundation, which kicked off in 2013, does is we run the Nova Open Charitable Foundation Lounge. So while the hotel that it's held in has a bar that you can go to and buy your alcoholic beverages, Laurie Brandt, who's the president of the NOCF, has somehow convinced the hotel that it's absolutely okay for us to run a lounge in. Previously, it's been in a suite of a couple of rooms, and essentially we run a bar there. We have a liquor license through the Virginia Board of Liquor Licenses, or whatever they're called. But last year and this year, we've moved it up into the there's like a room on the penthouse level, which overlooks downtown DC, so you can see all the like the Washington Monument and the Capitol building and that kind of thing. And yeah, we have the lounge, so people can come up and indulge in their favorite alcoholic beverage. The money raised there, all the profits from the lounge are also donated. I think most of those go to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. Last year, we are still sort of able to be a little bit flexible, which is really nice. Last year, I think it was Hurricane Irma hit Houston on the Wednesday. The show runs Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but we were able to say, okay, Friday, all the profits from the lounge on Friday, we'll donate to the Houston Food Bank. And the attendees dug deep and drank deep, and we were able to donate $5,000 to those guys, which was really sort of a cool thing. So these people were at the hotel anyway. They were going to be drinking some beers, and they chose to drink them in a place where to do some good.
George, this brings up our problem. We need millions of dollars so that we can just go to cons and hang out with our friends all the time.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this. What we need to do is we'll need to start a Patreon.
Oh, a Patreon.
And the Patreon will be to drink ourselves to death.
Right.
This will be for people who want us to stop
popular.
doing things. Right? And so what we'll do is people will bid an amount per drink we have.
Uh-huh.
And we can have a portion of that go to charity, and a portion of that goes to us going to the places to get drunk.
It's genius. There's so many people that would like to see that, I think.
Just like to see us.
Yeah, no.
Like leaving Las Vegas.
And for an extra $1 per drink, we don't turn on the streaming camera.
Oh. They can just, that they can, there's a little X in the corner that they can do.
Don't tell them! That ruins the plan!
The secret is out. Our entire plan has been thrown.
Oh my God.
It'd be fantastic. It'd be fantastic if you guys were able to do that.
So much money will be made.
Oh my God.
So George, I'm opening this up to you because you're in the middle of working on some new ideas, coming up with some new things. You had some questions before the cast even started. James had had just got his camera working.
He barely turned anything on. I'm like, James, I need to know this.
And in front of you are two of the greatest minds one of the greatest minds in painting miniatures and sculpting miniatures out there. I was going to let you guys fight it out to see who was one.
That was evil.
Now, just a second, though. This is actually something I was thinking about when we started up the cast, but I didn't have enough time to say because I was being pelted with questions. What can I say? For anyone who's new, Dave, pointing the right way. Yeah, there we go. Actually, one of the finest army builders ever, and he had a book that he put together this year. Kickstarted, went super successful, and with a little luck, we'll get to see more of that in the future. Dave, how is the book coming along?
Thank you. Yes, the book is coming along well. I'm about halfway through. I have. It's essentially a project management book when it comes down to it. So things are going well. The case studies at the end is what I'm now calling them. Sort of each of the army projects that I'm talking about specifically about how I was able to conceive of them and then work my way through them. I'm about 75, 80% of the way through the case studies. Which is really cool. Doing some more photography on Friday. This weekend, I've got some more models to paint for Legends of the Fabled Realms. But yeah, loads of great stuff coming along with that, and hopefully, the plan is to have everything ready to ship in November. So.
Excellent. And after the Kickstarter fulfills, will there be a way to purchase additional copies after that time as well? Is it one shot?
That's the plan at the moment. Is to I have to nail down a couple of distribution possibilities. So we'll have that. But if those all fall through, there will still be a digital version available.
So folks, like for real, if the content of this episode is something that's interesting to you, talking about how we build armies, shows color, we put stuff together, how we made cohesion, how we made things special. When this book is available, if you hadn't jumped on the Kickstarter, this is something for you. This is going to be fantastic.
We'll make sure once it comes out, Dave, just send us a link. We'll make sure that we get that out there to the audience. Because I mean, you can pretty much 100% count three copies sold at this point. Oh
yeah.
Or we'll just show up at your house and be like, Dave, can we borrow? So like a library lending version.
Sure. Yeah. No, we'll work something out. But no, the one of the things that I wanted to do with it as well is make the core important information as system non-specific as possible. So the principles and the philosophies can be applied to whatever project you're working on, whatever miniatures-based project you're working on. So be it War Machine, be it Hordes, be it getting your box set of Mon Pop painted up. So that's the sort of the approach for that. But yeah, definitely I'll send you guys a copy.
George, I'm opening it up. Do you have any questions for these two
minds? Let's do just a tiny bit of probably what's all over in your book. But I am staring down the barrel of what I think everybody, the scariest point of every army, which is I got a whole bunch of primed minis. Like thousands, it feels like, even though it's not thousands. It's a War Machine army, not 40K. So it's not literally thousands. It just feels like it right now.
Sure.
Of models. Is there, like, give us...
Hang on.
Yeah, we've all got them. I should just turn the camera to shine on that shelf over there.
We've gotten past step one.
Yes.
We've built in primed models.
Well, for me, that is actually a big step because often I don't get to the primed model stage. Often I get
Sometimes you don't get to the glued stage.
Well,
sometimes it's just some blue tack and a dream.
Well, the problem with the glued stage is because until you have internalized that I am not going to paint these models in the pieces like I should, I'm just going to put them all on their bases, base them, and then I will paint them. Once you have internalized that part.
I love your excuse for not assembling them as...
that's why this time
I'm going to paint them all in pieces.
Well, no, I'm going to... that's why models like that are blue tack. It's got a shield out in front or something, and then I realize, you know what? Nobody's going to see the crap behind the shield. I really should just glue that guy together.
So we were busting your balls a little bit there, but what was your question?
Yeah, well, so what should step one be? Should I be painting one as a test case? Should I be doing that sort of test phase on paper and then starting all with one color? Or like what are you going to be recommending in your book for that step one?
Amusingly enough, in my book, I'll recommend all those different things at different times. But it really comes down, a lot of it's going to be depending on how you work and what the vision you have at the moment. So do you have a picture in your mind of what this army looks like finished?
I do for
can you see it?
Single
Can you visualize
models. I can't really visualize the whole army right now, but I can see like what I think a Jack should look like in my head.
Okay, radio. So I would suggest you start with that Jack. Okay, the one that you can picture. Start with that. Put the others aside. Put them in in an open top container so that you can easily access them. I'm not saying put a lid on it, don't do that, but then put that behind you so that you're not looking at it, you're not being intimidated by those thousands of miniatures. Take that jack that you can see how you want it to look and paint that. Then bring everything back together and see if you then have the vision for the rest of the army. Okay?
Okay.
One of the things that I really like to do once I've got to a stage similar to that, because I do that sort of approach quite a bit, is I count up the number of models. Let's say there are 50. It's like, okay, so when I've painted 26 models, I am more than halfway there.
Okay.
So then I'll go, what's the sort of, what are the 26 smallest models?
Oh, I see. So you give yourself that leg up. It's like, these are the ones that are going to be the simplest to do or the smallest to do or whatever. And you get past that halfway, and then you're like, well, I'm more than halfway done.
Yeah, I've got to keep going. It would be a shame to leave it less than halfway done. So so usually I'll tackle the infantry first. So if you've got a couple of units of 10 models, paint those up. You've got 6 sort of medium-sized models, paint those up, and then you're a good chunk of the way through. And then you've got things that are cool, like your character models, or so your casters, or your jacks, your larger jacks, that sort of thing. Some people like to sort of get started. They want to paint the characters. They want to paint a big cool model, and those things take time. So as you go along, you spend a couple of days or a week or two, and you've got, at the end of that, you've got 2 models done, and you've got another 48 to go.
Okay, so rank and file first.
That's a struggle.
Yeah,
I like that. I think that is so. I am guilty of picking up the most interesting model first and painting it, and spending a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks painting that model first, and then looking at the rest of the army and saying, fuck it, I'm going to switch factions.
You saved that one to reward yourself partway through.
Yeah. That's a great point. No, I think for the next phase, I think I'm going to try going the opposite direction.
And I've got a question for James. So, sure. As someone who has just added an airbrush to their arsenal, is single model airbrushing something I should be doing, or should I be only pulling out their brush when I'm doing 20 models? Or like, I mean, for a bust like the ones you're doing, they're obviously of that size, it's great, but I look at a single model and I'm like, that's a lot of setup and tear down for one model.
So the way I tend to work, pretty similar to what Dave said, I started with a proof of concept model. Mm-hmm. And I choose a model generally that is some kind of troop. So it's not, one of the huge pieces, but it has surfaces and areas that will have colors that will relate to the rest of the army. I want to try out a little bit of everything. And if I'm going to be using my airbrush on the rest of the army, for that model, I will break it out for one model. Okay. You know what I'm saying? So I set up my techniques, I try it out, I make one guy who has, my skin tones, who has my secondary colors, who has a little bit of armor, who's got a little bit of a bunch of things that I know I'm going to want to do. And then I look at that and I decide whether or not that's more or less the direction I want to go. I can always change from that. It's just one guy. If I want to go back and change something, I pull out my brush and just change that one thing. But I finish one model, airbrush and paintbrush. And then what I would do is I would think through my process in chunks. So I would look at that next unit, and I wouldn't get out my airbrush to paint one model for that unit. I would grab all 4 of those guys, and I would airbrush sections on all 4 of them so that it's not the same amount of cleanup and tear down. And if I've got extra paint left in my airbrush, when I finish on those 4 or 5 guys, I just reach for something else in the bin that's already primed, where I know I'm going to need to shoot some of that color anyway. So I end up with all these like partial done models along the way, just using up what's left of my paint. That way, also later on when I get to those models, there's less work because some of the work's already been done. Some of the color's already there. So would I one by one my models? Probably not. I'd probably work on, 4 or 5 guys at a time, unless it's like a Warjack or something big like that.
Yeah.
Maybe I one or two of those at a time. But on general models, I'm gonna go like 4 guys at a time. Because the well on your airbrush, you're probably not filling it to the brim anyway, but you can run a bit of paint through there and hit 4 or 5 guys in a go, no problem. And then whatever's left in your brush, shoot it at something else till you're running out, then clean and switch up your color, move on to the next thing. I hit, I personally will never paint an army again without an airbrush because I enjoy it. I enjoy the process. I enjoy the finish. It works for me. It makes sense. So I'm going to be painting, almost all my base coats are airbrushed. After that, most of my first and second highlights are airbrushed, and then I get out my brushes and I start doing all the work. But I can get something on the table. I get a Khador army on the table in a weekend, no problem. If it's glued and primed and ready to go, because I've got a good system, because I know how my tool works.
Good news, you can also learn how to use a Khador army in a weekend. So,
it all works out. So I'm going to be in Hamilton on Friday. I'll just, on the way back, I'll just swing by and drop it off. And I'll pick it up on Monday.
All right, guys, okay? I got to cut us all off here. We're running out of time tonight, and I got to do a little bit of shout-outs to some of our sponsors. Dave, James, I want to thank you guys so much for joining us once again. James, always a pleasure having you on the show. And Dave, you got to come on more often, man. Yeah. I love having you here.
That'd be great. Yeah, just shoot me a message when you're when you want to have me back on.
There's so much cool stuff happening with the Nova Open Charitable Foundation. I really can't speak enough to the War Machine community, to the Moose Machine community. If you haven't gone over there and bought a couple of tickets, it's $2, man. $2.
Yep.
You could for the price of a cup of coffee, you too could have a 75-point list.
Okay, we now need in the arms of an angel with all shots from the Nova Open.
A sad-looking troll in the back.
Just with a single
These
tear.
Trolls need a home. I can't speak enough.
Sorry, one thing I just got to quickly jump in and say on the site we do have a $10 minimum purchase. The reason for that is that we always promise that we'll send 95 cents from every dollar to the charity.
And the
3 cents goes to PayPal, 2 cents goes to shipping.
Yep.
For every purchase that we would have under $10, the PayPal fees really bite into the rest of that.
Yep.
So that's why we've got that $10 minimum.
Totally
But
fair.
anyway, sorry, keep going.
So for $10,
Starbucks
less than a cup of Starbucks coffee and a biscuit, you too could take home these poor lonely trolls. George, let's give some shout outs to some of our sponsors. I really want to thank the guys from Muse on Minis for keeping us on the air.
Yeah, they continue to have made the horrible mistake of letting us piggyback on that.
I don't even think they know we're still here.
I hope not, because if they ever figure it out, we're boned.
And I want to thank our really good friends at Out of the Box who make this happen. You've been keeping up on stuff. What's going on?
You haven't been around.
I've not been around.
Last week, so we here in Ottawa live in this charmed life where we pay US MSRP for our models in Canadian dollars. And there was a 20% sale on everything.
Oh my God.
I may have bought a Colossal for under $100.
You didn't tell me.
It was amazing. Yeah, and speaking of those pre-done bases.
Oh, he's got all of them now.
He has
Secret Weapon miniatures. Rack.
This man has a problem.
Yeah.
So if you ever get him to carry your product, he doesn't just get a couple of them in. He says, "I'll take one of everything,
and I'll reorder if I sell them."
Yeah, if I sell them, I'll just reorder them. So he literally got in everything. So if you are in Canada, I think it's $15 anywhere in Ontario.
Yep.
For shipping, and then just fill your pockets, because he has all of the bases.
He's got all the stuff from P3. He's got all the stuff from Vallejo. He's got all the stuff from...
Iwata airbrushes in stock.
So go. We can't speak enough about how great these guys are.
It is amazing.
And I mean, there's a reason why we are,
affiliated
with these guys, because they got it all. So check them out. They are online. You can do online orders. He does ship anywhere in Canada. Check them out.
Yep.
It's out of the box. You'll love it. All right, that's it for us for this evening, everybody. I want to thank our guests. I want to thank the Nova Open Charitable Foundation for bringing Moose Machine back into the fold this year. James, thanks for keeping me around in all of this. It's one of my favorite times of year. I promise.
Don't you talk like that.
I'm going to pick up a paintbrush sometime really soon.
It's sad. I've used an airbrush more recently than you have.
It's true. That is the saddest thing that may have ever happened. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got to call it quits for tonight. No, there is no trivia tonight for anybody that's asking, because Dave doesn't play War Machine, so it's pretty much the cruelest thing to do to a human being ever.
The answer is green.
Yes, green. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's
what
it.
What was the question? Sorry.
That's it for us for this evening. George, dice down.
Dice down.
Moose Machine and This Death Clock Has 60 Minutes is a proud part of the Muse on Minis network. Podcasts go online every Thursday morning. You can watch the show live every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on Twitch, and keep in touch with us on our Facebook page. Just Google Moose Machine. If you can't find us, you're doing
gotta
the
get you one of those
internet
t-shirts.
wrong.
We're just going to talk over the...
Yeah, we'll talk
We're
over
just going to talk over
because
the
we have to edit it now anyway.
Yeah, we have to edit it anyway.
Oh, really? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's totally
We're
not
all
your
done.
fault.
I thought you guys
It's
had,
fine.
cut.
Longest...
No,